Finally, scientists have uncovered the truth about the Titanic. On April 14, 1912, at 11:40 p.m., the RMS Titanic struck an iceberg and sank by 2:20 a.m. on April 15th. The largest ship of its time vanished beneath the cold Atlantic Ocean. The Titanic took over 1,500 lives, more than two-thirds of the passengers on board. But the reason behind this disaster, we've always been told it was an iceberg. But recent discoveries challenge that theory. In this video, I'm going to share the full truth buried for over 100 years. The Titanic was 882 feet long, 92 feet wide, and stood 175 feet tall. It looked unsinkable. People could walk long distances on its decks, and even the ship's officers needed weeks to navigate it. The Titanic had 4 huge smokestacks, each weighing 60 tons. They were angled at 30 degrees to look more imposing. The ship cost $7.5 million, which would be around $166 million today. Surprisingly, this was less than the $200 million spent on the 1997 blockbuster Titanic. Harland and Wolff shipyard brought in 3,000 workers, and the project took 26 months to finish. It was a tough and risky job. 8 people lost their lives during construction and 246 were injured. It's hard to believe such a complex operation could be undone by one piece of ice. But new findings suggest the original cause was fire. Journalist Sonam Maloney discovered a massive black spot on the ship's hull. She noticed it in a photo taken before the Titanic set sail. The fire burned for 3 weeks at a high temperature before anyone noticed. Metal experts believe the conditions weakened the metal by up to 75%. That's why the ice easily broke into the side of the ship. If it weren't for the fire, the disaster might not have happened. The ice hit right where the metal was weak. The project management knew about the fire, but set off on the journey anyway. The ship owners faced bankruptcy if they cancelled the trip. At that time, miners were on strike, so there wasn't enough coal, but the tickets had already been sold and other ships had cancelled their trips. The owners bought up all the coal they could find. The truth was hidden by steering the ship to keep the fire signs away from the docks, and that's how the journey began. The interior design of the Titanic was inspired by the Ritz Hotel in London. The grand staircase descended 7 stories and was decorated with paintings and bronze angel statues. First-class amenities included a heated swimming pool, a Turkish bath, a gym, and a squash court. There was a courtroom and a beauty salon, and the ladies could ask for a hairstylist. They even had a newspaper called the Atlas Daily. Plus, there was a special area for first-class passengers and their dogs. Pets could eat, take walks, and even train during the trip. The first-class meals had 13 courses, each with its own wine. It was a big event that lasted about 5 hours. They had 1,500 bottles of wine, 20,000 bottles of beer, and 8,000 cigars. If they had binoculars, they might have saved the Titanic. The binoculars were locked away, and the key was forgotten. The key was supposed to be handed over, but it was forgotten. If the crew had binoculars, they would have spotted the iceberg earlier. Maybe the accident could have been avoided if the ship hadn't been speeding. They were running behind schedule, which could hurt Titanic's reputation. That's why the ship was going faster than it should have. They needed around 60 lifeboats to ensure everyone's safety. The chief designer planned for 48 lifeboats, but they cut it down to 20. This decision was purely for aesthetic reasons. Those 20 lifeboats could only hold a third of all the people on the ship. The number of lifeboats was based on the ship's weight, not the number of passengers. Lifeboat drills were standard on large ships. The idea was to prepare the crew for emergencies. Unfortunately, there was no training like that on the Titanic. Captain Edward John Smith cancelled the drill that was supposed to happen the morning the Titanic sank. There were other ships warning about ice in the water. It took the crew over half an hour to launch the lifeboats instead of the usual 10 minutes. The first lifeboat had 65 seats, but only 27 people were on it. People were hesitant to leave the ship and didn't grasp the seriousness of the situation. In 2012, researchers found out that Captain Smith flunked his first navigation exam. He eventually passed, but that might have played a part in the disaster. When the Titanic was sinking, the crew sent out distress signals, but a nearby ship called the California ignored them. The captain of the California lost his job, but modern researchers cleared his name.